Hi everyone, I now have a 15% off code for neilsgadgets.com. They have tons of lighting, headlamps, batteries, flashlights. If you need things like that, check them out down below at their link. My code knivessportsadventures will give you 15% off pretty much everything on that entire website. Using codes like that are down in my description and links really does help the channel out a lot and helps me bring you lots of fun content like this. The Cold Steel Frenzy is the absolute king of box openers if you want to open boxes like that. On this week's episode of Knives and EDC Gear, we are talking about the Cold Steel Frenzy. And I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, that's not really EDC gear. And it kind of is, but it's kind of not, but it's still super cool. First, it's enormous. My hands are XL size and I can get two hands on that handle almost comfortably. Let's look at a size comparison. Cold Steel Frenzy, Cold Steel 6-inch tie light, $20 bill. These knives are far larger than what most people would consider EDC type knives, which would be the Benchmade Bug Out and the Hogue Deca. Even relatively large EDC knives like the 4-inch Cold Steel tie light are dwarfed by these knives. Even my Microtech Amphibian, which is admittedly a big folding knife in my XL size hands, is tiny compared to these giants. These are ridiculous and so much fun because of it. And size comparison is just where this thing starts. I mean, it has this enormous, ridiculous, forward swept hawkbill size blade, which, by the way, for some things actually works really well. It actually works incredibly well as a box opener. That tip digs into things really well, but it is also incredibly destructive. Not that you would actually use this very often, right? This is meant to be something fun. This is uncool in the way a Lamborghini is uncool, where it's just so overstated and it's so loud and it's so ridiculous, but it actually functions anyway, that it's fun. And we don't love it because it's cool, because it's not. It's just ridiculous, right? But it's so ridiculous that it actually swings kind of back all the way full circle and ends up kind of being cool again. It's just so much fun that we forgive it for being ridiculous, even though it is. Even the blue G10, right? I wish more companies would do stuff like this because that's just fun. And it's outlandish and it's overstated, but it's uncool in a cool kind of way, if you know what I mean. It's just fun. And I wish that I had more knives that look like this, that were striped and blue and blingy and just out there, but still quality. I mean, it has a triad lock. It's the strongest lock on the market, which, by the way, is the only lock that I would ever want to see on a knife like this, because that forward tip, if it gets bumped on the back, is really going to want to close. And that knife is a guillotine, right? That thing is long and it's sharp. And if that were to get pulled close on your fingers, that could very well end up with you being called Four Finger Dave, right? This is just, it'd be scary, right? But it actually does work well for some things if you're actually going to use it. What's the saving grace of this knife is that it's actually a usable knife. So if you're looking at cutting through rope or something that requires a forward curve in the blade like that, this does incredibly well. I mean, there's a ton of blade surface there. Of course, it's going to cut. Things like digging into tight spaces, like undoing zip ties or sliding in and opening tape on boxes. I mean, it really functions extremely well, even if it is entirely ridiculous. It's not going to cut well against a cutting board, right? It's just not designed for that. You're going to just drag the very tip along the cutting board. But that's not really, I mean, who cares, right? Kind of like edge retention for this knife. I mean, who really cares, right? It's ridiculous and it's supposed to be fun. Now, Cold Steel typically does a very good job of heat treating their S35 VN. I'll put up some actual edge retention numbers there because I expect it to do pretty well. But that's not why you bought this knife, right? You bought this knife because it's fun. Now, the history of this blade is actually pretty interesting. I'll put up some names of what this descended from on the video here. But This actually descended from a weapon, and if you swing this knife like this, you can generate a lot of impact at that very point in a swinging motion this way, which was designed as an armor-piercing weapon. Some weapons designed for piercing armor, you have to stab this way, but stabbing this way when you're fighting or fencing or whatever requires a lot more skill than just swinging the knife this way. If you can just swing over and over again and pierce armor, that's very effective. So it's a very effective piercing design for swinging. Now for stabbing, it's not so great because when you're stabbing with a curved tip like this, what's going to end up happening is that curve is going to pull it this way. Now, because the cutting edge is this way, it still cuts in when you're stabbing, but it's not the most effective for stabbing because it's going to twist. But for swinging and hacking and doing things like that, it's awesome. Now, you wouldn't normally swing and hack with a folding knife. If you're going to do it, the triad lock is the thing to have. But again, it's overstated and ridiculous, and it's done in a way that you can actually carry, right? This is meant to be something you can carry, even though it's ridiculous. And while silly, I can't help but like it. It's just too much fun, right? I want to test this. I want to stick it in my pocket, and I want to pull it out, and I want to chop through branches in the woods, right? I want to whip this out and open boxes with it because it's just, I mean, you're going to shock whoever's around, but don't do it when people are around. Just open boxes at home where you can have your fun by yourself or around other knife enthusiasts who will appreciate it. Super fun knife. Incidentally, I waited about 10 years to buy this knife. I kind of liked it and I kind of wanted it, but I really would have liked a 3.5 or really a 4-inch cold steel Frenzy would be awesome. Cold Steel has always made a 4-inch tie light, right? And they make their 6-inch tie light, which is also pretty similar in size to the Frenzy, rather. But the 6-inch tie light is not a real great carry because it's too big and bulky. The 4-inch has always been a decent carry. I waited 10 years for Cold Steel to make a smaller version of this, and they didn't. And I finally gave up and said, you know what? I'm just going to finally get a Frenzy. I like the Frenzy. It's fun and stupid, but I like it. So I got one. And now, after so many years, they're finally coming out with a 3.5, 4-inch version of this knife. And I really want that version more than I want this because I know I'll carry it more. But I have a hard time giving up this one, right? It's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. Despite being overstated and ridiculous and everything we've already talked about, this knife does have some surprising design features that make it more practical than you would think. For instance, this knife is only 5.65 ounces. For reference, that is about 0.4 ounces lighter than a Microtech Amphibian, which is a knife that I carry on a regular basis. So it's not outrageous as far as carry goes. The pocket clip is well designed. It holds your pants well. The grip is comfortable. This is actually one of the more comfortable folding knives to hold that I have tested in recent memory because it's a lockback, right? So there's no gap in the back to pinch your hand. The G10 is well contoured. It's smooth. This is probably the best fit and finish that I have ever experienced on a Cold Steel knife. It really is done pretty well. The grind lines are nice and even. The thumb stud is machined rather than just a stamped pressing or something. It's got some really nice little touches to it, and it's better than most Cold Steels. Now, I mean, it's got the rough around the edges stuff, right? The lockback bar right here that you have to push your thumb into is a little on the sharp side to unlock it. It's really stiff to unlock, and it needs to be because that's a 6-inch blade there. You don't want something hitting that and unlocking it accidentally. So they made the lock stiff on this on purpose, and that's a really good thing. But my wife had a hard time unlocking it. My sister and her little tiny 100-pound soaking wet frame couldn't unlock this at all. Little touches of quality on this knife, like the stop pin area on the back there being completely rounded out to give you better contact and cause more surface area to contact there so that the knife doesn't wear out as quickly. This is a quality knife. I mean, it's full G10. There's no liners or anything, but we've all seen Cold Steel's videos on the internet with Andrew Demko and how he tests these triad locks, right? And having G10 as a side plate with no liner is not a problem. They're still the most durable locks on the market. So Cold Steel has done a decent job of making this carryable and usable. It's got a reversible pocket clip. You know, they've done all the things that they should do, which almost makes it funnier because the knife itself is just so ridiculous. Even though this knife was designed as a weapon, as far as uses of this knife go, I wouldn't even recommend it for a self-defense knife, simply because of the opening mechanism, right? You're opening a huge blade, you're opening a stiff lock, you have to do it with the thumb stud. So as you're opening it, you have to really get this knife open, and it takes a pretty precise push on that thumb stud to do it. So this is just, it's too fiddly for a self-defense knife. It doesn't really lend itself to getting it out of your pocket quickly and opening it in a gross motor skill manner. Self-defense, you want something you can do quickly with one big motion. You don't want to have to fiddle around with something small and fingery to get your knife open, whatever. That's why Karambit's wave openers, the Emerson wave opener kind of thing, are really better for self-defense than something like this. So while the original was designed as a weapon, this is just too slow to deploy to be a reasonable weapon, right? The originals were fixed blades like swords. All right, that about wraps it up. Over to you guys. Do you like the Cold Steel Frenzy? Do you like large, ridiculous knives like this? Is this something you want to see more of in the future? I actually had a lot of fun playing with this knife, recording this video. Please give the video a like. Also, continue to check my channel for new stuff every week. I am doing a lot of fun, inexpensive knives here coming up. I'm also still giving away that zero tolerance 452 carbon fiber. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, now's a great time. You could win that knife. I'm giving away when I get to 1,500 subscribers. So thank you all for watching and enjoy your ridiculous and fun knives.